Do you believe that with just a single lean forward on horseback, a nameless girl could make the entire elite world bow their heads? Tessa Wren, a girl from a horse ranch in Montana, no fame, no pedigree, just a worn handkerchief and a courage forged through freezing morning rides. She was looked down upon the moment she stepped foot in Avalon, the sanctuary of power where every step was laced with silk and bloodline. They called her stable girl the bunny mascot and tried to crush her under sneers, schemes, and a murderous stallion named Obsidian Phantom. But after just a few rounds, the beast bowed. With a single flick of her silver whip, the crowd fell silent. And when the twisted truth came to light, the heir to the Caulfield Empire stood in the middle of the arena and declared, "Before the world, she doesn't need your approval. She is the new standard." From a girl set up to fall off a horse in front of millions, Tessa Wren became a living legend, forever changing the way Avalon defined worth, honor, and courage. Back in Montana, the fields shimmered gold under the sunset as Tessa unhooked the reins from the weathered wooden fence. She stood still for a moment, listening to the quiet breath of the horse beside her, still in disbelief at the italicized words printed on the invitation in her jacket pocket. Avalon Royal Polo Tournament, an honorary invitation for Miss Tessa Wren. Departure the 17th. Personally requested by Lord Julian Caulfield. Tessa had never set foot in England. She never imagined herself as a guest at an event where a single name on the list cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. At that moment, she was still hammering a horseshoe back in place with a broken-handled mallet. Yet her father, an aging man who once trained cavalry riders for the military, had eyes lit with pride when she mentioned the name Julian. He's not just rich, Tessa. He understands real worth. If he wants you there, then you must go. Not for glory, for yourself. Julian Caulfield, heir to the $120 billion Caulfield dynasty. Once featured on the cover of Forbes, eyes like ice smile, unreadable. But to Tessa, he was the boy in the gray sweater sitting on the ranch fence last summer, listening as she spoke about orphaned horses and smiling faintly when she said, "Sometimes a wild horse just needs someone calm enough to understand." The 9-hour flight took Tessa to another world. Avalon Estate emerged like a castle rising from a sea of emerald grass. Marble fountains glistened in the sun, rows of birch trees stood like uniformed soldiers on parade. Footmen in tailcoats moved with quiet precision. Luxury cars lined the driveway like an open-air gallery of mechanical art. Tessa stepped out of the car, wearing a pale white linen dress. Around her wrist was a silver fabric band. Her father had tied it there before she left the airport. No makeup, no designer labels, only a calm gaze and a pair of slightly worn riding boots. And just as she expected, the first glances weren't welcoming. A woman in a crimson velvet gown cut off the steward, eyeing Tessa from head to toe as if she were a stain on a silk tablecloth. "Do we have a new maid?" She laughed. Those around her laughed too, their voices echoing against the stone walls. Tessa simply smiled and walked on, head held high pace, unshaken. She hadn't come to Avalon to please them. She came at the invitation of one person. And for the one thing she had never done, prove herself to a world that never believed she belonged. The sound of her boots echoed against the marble floor as she stepped into Avalon's grand hall. Vaulted ceilings soared above her, adorned with 3 massive crystal chandeliers, frozen constellations in midair. The air was thick with the expensive scent of diptyque candles and the lingering perfume of heirloom roses from the glass garden behind the estate. Tessa had never feared opulence. She just didn't belong in it. Beneath the soft golden light, her simple white linen dress hugged her slender frame, a stillness among a storm of silk and velvet. On her head, a small brown hat trimmed with wild feathers tilted gently in the breeze of the overhead fans. Her only accessory, a silk ribbon loosely tied around her wrist, a keepsake from her mother. No brand, no backstory, just love. But to the eyes standing in that grand hall, all they saw was a violation of high society aesthetics. "Who is she?" A woman's voice whispered from the leather benches. Tessa didn't need to turn around to recognize the sarcasm woven into every syllable. A wild creature lost in a flower garden, a middle-aged gentleman smirked. Tessa kept walking, but her eyes shifted sideways and met a familiar gaze. Julian Caulfield. He stood at the far end of the hall, dressed in a deep navy suit as dark as the midnight sky. A silver silk pocket square tucked neatly at his chest. He was mid-conversation with a group of investors, but in that fleeting moment, his eyes left them and found her. No shock, no concern, just a subtle smile as if to say, "You finally came," but no one else looked at Tessa that way. To the right of the hall, a golden-haired girl adjusted her diamond earrings and tilted her head as she sized Tessa up and down, Sloane Maddox Julian's cousin, the best rider of last year's tournament, and the one who had once publicly declared, "If Julian chooses a girl beneath our class, it will stain the Caulfield name." Sloane stepped forward, her pointed heels clicking like talons on marble. "Excuse me, is there a mistake? The staff quarters are in the annex." Her voice was sweet, honey, laced with venom. Tessa merely smiled, tilting her head slightly. "Thank you for the directions, but I'm here at the personal invitation of Julian Caulfield." She paused. "He knows what I'm wearing." The air froze. Sloane blinked. A sharp silence sliced the room like a razor's edge. All eyes turned to Tessa, but she stood firm, posture poised. No arrogance, no defense, only presence, the kind you couldn't ignore. And then from the far end of the corridor, Julian began to walk toward her, slow, steady, deliberate. Each step made the grand hall feel like it was holding its breath. He reached, Tessa said nothing, and simply placed a gentle hand on her back. "Everyone," Julian said, his voice deep and resonant like a bronze bell. "This is Tessa Wren, the one I invited to Avalon, and the only one I wish to stand beside this week." The hall fell so silent one could hear the sound of wine touching. Crystal Sloane turned away, her jaw clenched. A few guests coughed quietly, but now those same eyes no longer saw Tessa as an outsider. They began to see her as a real threat. The afternoon tea party in Avalon Estates' glass garden was a centuries-old tradition where Italian wicker chairs, where silk-upholstered macaron trays were arranged in signature brand colors, and each teacup was poured from silver kettles worth more than some sports cars. Tessa Wren sat quietly at the edge of a table, hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea. Sunlight filtered through the glass ceiling, glinting off the folds of her white dress. She said nothing, nor did she try to join the lively laughter circling around the cello player near the daffodil fountain. But it was that very stillness, that composed quiet, that made her stand out. "Is she not wearing any jewelry?" A girl in an amber dress whispered to her friend, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. "Oh, right. Maybe she thinks white linen is a kind of natural elegance." Laughter erupted, delicate, crystal clear, and cold as cut glass. Tessa placed her cup down, eyes still fixed on the garden beyond, but her ears caught every giggle, every whispered jab like tiny needles pricking her spine. Sloane Maddox stood champagne flute in hand and stepped into the center of the stone courtyard. Her blonde hair swept into a regal bun, and her tailored Versace riding dress clung to her body as though sculpted to command attention. "We have a very special guest today," she announced, drawing every gaze to her. "A lady from the mythical land of Montana." Laughter rippled again. Someone fake yawned. "She brings with her not just simplicity but the scent of hay and the call of neighing horses." Sloane smirked, turning fully toward Tessa. "And who knows, maybe she'll teach us how to tie reins with old rope." Laughter erupted. Someone clapped slow, sarcastic. A young woman discreetly lifted her phone, recording Tessa's expression, already drafting the caption, "Stable girl meets royalty." Tessa didn't flinch. She gently touched the silk ribbon tied around her wrist, as if drawing strength from the courage her father once gave her. "That's enough." Julian's voice broke through the sunlit afternoon like distant thunder. He stepped out from behind the garden wall, where everyone assumed he wasn't. His deep gray eyes were colder than winter wind as they locked onto Sloane. "Don't turn this gathering into a stage for your jealousy. Tessa is my guest, and the only one here who doesn't need to pretend." No one laughed anymore. Sloane shrugged, sipping her champagne. "It was just a joke." Julian turned to Tessa. "Do you want to leave?" Tessa shook her head. Her eyes shimmered like the surface of a still pond after rain. "No need, I'm used to horses neighing, and people are just another kind of noise." A hush fell. Then somewhere from a corner, table came a slow clap. Once, then twice, then a third. No one knew who started it, but everyone understood the mockery had backfired. Sloane smiled stiffly, but behind that smile, envy had hardened into something sharper, resentment. Dawn at Avalon Estate arrived with a veil of mist over the perfectly trimmed polo fields, velvet green under the rising sun. Thoroughbred horses were led to the practice stables, their coats' gleaming hooves thudding rhythmically on the damp grass. Today was warm-up day, and every eye would be on Tessa. Wren Julian had left early for an emergency meeting with the Caulfield Group Board. Before leaving, he gave her a quiet instruction. Tessa, just light riding today. Choose Winter Gale. He's calm, obedient. I marked him with a silver tag. Be careful. She nodded, committing the name to memory, Winter Gale. But as soon as Julian disappeared beyond the gates, danger was already waiting in the stables. Sloane Maddox had made her move. She didn't come alone. Beside her stood Bianca Vale, owner of the Vale fashion empire, and someone who had harbored a silent disdain for Tessa since the tea garden incident. They stood in the shadow of the stables, whispering like villains in a two-woman play. She should ride the horse that matches her. Bianca muttered, eyes drifting over the nameplates above the stalls. A horse always reflects its rider's class. Sloane smirked. Then Obsidian Phantom is the perfect match. That horse-towering black stallion with embers for eyes had once sent a jockey to the ICU. It had long been banned from competition, suspected in a fatal accident. No one at Avalon dared go near it until now. In silence, Sloane removed the silver nameplate from Winter Gale's stall. In its place, she clipped on a matching tag, one that read, Obsidian Phantom, in the exact spot Julian had told Tessa to find her horse. Within minutes, the trap was set. A bloodless trap, but one sharp enough to shatter a girl's honor. As Tessa stepped into the stables, the morning light cast golden streaks over the white fences and dew-laced grass. The trainers bowed politely, but their eyes showed hesitation when they saw the nameplate she was heading toward. Are you sure? One of them asked, cautiously hand-resting on the reins of a horse thrashing behind the iron stall door. Tessa nodded without a hint of doubt. Julian marked it, I trust him. She didn't know that her trust was about to be tested in front of the entire aristocratic world. Tessa stepped forward and opened the stall. Obsidian Phantom raised its head and growled low. Its four legs jerked violently. Its jaws clenched with an audible grind. Its eyes, wild and red, looked like fire trapped inside a living creature. Around her, those preparing for tomorrow's grand show turned their heads. Some began lifting their phones, taking photos, recording video. Someone had already started laughing. She picked Phantom. This'll be the joke of the season. Get TikTok ready. Sloane and Bianca stood nearby, arms crossed. Bianca murmured, almost singing, everyone finds out where they belong. Eventually, Tessa approached Obsidian. Phantom sweat gathered at the nape of her neck, but her gaze did not waver. She remembered her father's words. Horses don't fear shouting. They fear unsure hands. She reached out and touched the stallion's glossy black neck. The beast didn't react immediately, but a shiver ran down its spine. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, and in that moment, the silent battle began. Between a girl everyone dismissed and a beast chosen to destroy her under the gaze of the elite. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew Tessa Wren was writing a death sentence. As she led Obsidian Phantom out of the stall, the morning sunlight reflected off its tar-black coat. The crowd lining the practice fence fell silent. Phones lifted higher, zoom lenses locked in. A few people went live. Is she insane? That monster once threw a rider just because he coughed too loudly. But Tessa didn't flinch. Every step she took was a silent declaration. Her worn riding boots tapped evenly on the ground. The feather on her hat swayed in the breeze. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply facing a fate, one she didn't yet know had been tampered with. In the viewing gallery, Sloane Maddox crossed her arms, her face stretching into a cold, satisfied smile. $50 she falls in the first 10 seconds. 100 if Phantom kicks off the entire saddle. Bianca Vale said nothing. She just turned to her camera lens, adjusting her lipstick, waiting for the perfect moment to capture a photo of failure. Tessa climbed into the saddle. Obsidian Phantom shuddered beneath her. Muscles tightened, its neck arched high, its bloodshot eyes narrowed. It wasn't used to being ridden. It didn't want anyone on its back, and it had never let anyone leave unbroken. The moment her boot touched the stirrup, it roared. Bam! The entire training ground trembled. Obsidian Phantom reared its front legs, slashing the air as if to rip the sky apart. Screams erupted from the gallery. Some recoiled in fear. Others cheered like it was a bullfight in Madrid. She's gonna fall. No one's stopping her. Is Julian planning to bury his new girlfriend alive? Tessa leaned, but did not fall. She clamped her legs around the horse's body, lowered herself close to its neck, and gripped the reins tightly. Breathe together. No fear, no force. Her father's words echoed in her mind, muscle memory carved from a lifetime. Obsidian Phantom spun in circles. It screamed. It pounded the ground. But Tessa didn't move. Her eyes weren't on the crowd. They weren't on the cameras. They were locked on the creature beneath her as if she were reading a silent language. Her body relaxed, then tensed in perfect sync with the moment. Phantom tried to twist again. Sloane frowned. Why? Hasn't she fallen? Bianca lowered her sunglasses. The horse should be wilder. She should have. But just then, Obsidian Phantom lowered its hooves. No bucking, no jerking of the reins, no scream. It stood still, and then suddenly it started walking, slow, heavy. But obedient Tessa gave the reins the gentlest pull. The horse turned, then began trotting. Silence crashed like thunder. On live streams, comment bubbles flashed across the screen. What is happening? Did she just control Phantom? That's the horse that paralyzed a jockey for life, right? Tessa focused on slowing her heartbeat, lips pressed tightly together. Inside, she was trembling, but on the outside, she rode like someone born to tame the wildest beast in Avalon. A photographer nearby began clicking instinctively. He didn't know what he was capturing, only that he saw light bursting through the black mane of the stallion, and a girl riding atop, not just a horse, but the contempt of the elite. From the shadows, a man emerged from the boardroom, Julian Caulfield. He froze when he saw the girl he loved riding. Obsidian Phantom, in the middle of hundreds of stunned gazes, and his heart beat faster, not from fear but because he knew. They set her up, but she didn't fall. She's flying, Obsidian. Phantom wasn't just a horse. He was rage in living form, bred to dominate, discarded because he couldn't be controlled. And this morning, they believed he would crush a girl from Montana, like a storm flattening a wooden shack. But Tessa Wren's hands never shook. She moved with Phantom's rhythm, sinking her breath to each pounding hoof. Every time the beast charged toward the fence, she didn't yank the reins like others would. She leaned, she held, she waited, not to fight, but to listen. The more you pull, the more it resists. Her father had once said, his hand rested on an injured mare, but if you let it see you're not its enemy, it'll stop. Not out of fear, out of trust. Tessa didn't conquer Phantom with force. She calmed it with stillness. Below the stands, the laughter had died. In its place came a rare sound at Avalon, the sound of hearts beating. With hope, Bianca Vale, still wearing her sunglasses, slowly lowered her phone. The photo she had planned to post, captioned, "Horseback Disaster." It was suddenly a symbol of the opposite. She said nothing, only tightened her grip on the phone. Sloane Maddox stood, frozen fingers clutching the hem of her dress until they turned white. Impossible. It's never let anyone ride more than one lap. Julian Caulfield stood at the rail, eyes locked on the girl, turning mockery into myth. He had seen CEOs thrown from horses by pride, billionaires crushed under pressure, but never a girl like this. Make a monster bow. Phantom roared one final time. Tessa leaned in and whispered something only the horse could hear. We don't need their forgiveness. We just need each other not to betray. And for the first time, Obsidian Phantom bowed its head, slowly as if in salute. The first clap broke the silence, alone. But sincere, an old trainer by the stables removed his hat and bowed, then another followed, and then the entire gallery. The applause rose like a tide, not for beauty, not for victory, but for a kind of quiet resilience that refused to shatter. Julian walked forward. He didn't say a word. He simply looked at Tessa. Tessa dismounted slowly from the saddle. Her white dress remained spotless. Her face was flushed hair damp with sweat. But her eyes still carried the same quiet gaze from the morning they first met. Calm, steady, needing no applause. He whispered as she stepped closer. You just taught the world how to face what they're too afraid to look at. And far away in a modest room in Montana, Tessa's father sat watching the live stream on an old phone, His eyes welled with tears, his hands trembled not from age, but from pride. He whispered softly almost to Tessa's mother in the faded photo nearby. She never needed them to like her. She just needed to prove that what she believed was right. The Avalon exhibition match was minutes from kickoff. The top riders were mounted and ready. Team Caulfield, led by Sloane Maddox, lined up at the far end of the field, her stare sharp as a blade as she glanced toward the stables. Tessa Wren was tightening her saddle straps. No one had told her to compete. She wasn't on the official roster. Even Julian had whispered in her ear earlier, "Just stand beside me today. That's all I need." But she had looked him straight in the eye and replied, voice firm, "They don't need my silence. They need to know. I didn't come here to bow." The Avalon arena seemed to hold its breath as Tessa rode Obsidian Phantom onto the field. She didn't wear a team uniform. She had no number on her back, just a sleek white dress hair and a low bun, and a silver whip loosely strapped to her saddle. "Does she think this is a runway show?" Bianca scoffed from the VIP section, clutching a champagne glass. She hadn't sipped her throat too dry since morning. "This is sport, not a horse farm parade." The trumpet sounded. The match began. Sloane led the charge, commanding her $9 million pedigree horse like a warrior queen. The riders surged forward, hooves thundered across the thick turf like rolling storms. But it was Tessa who touched the ball first. Phantom surged. No whip, no commands. Just a subtle lean of her body. And he darted past two riders, drawing gasps from the stands. What the Phantom is? Competing. Tessa's in the lead. Julian stood at the rail, his eyes locked on every breathtaking stride. He didn't shout, he didn't cheer. He simply held a hand to his chest, steadying a heart ready to explode. Across the field, Sloane pulled her reins tight, steering her horse to box Tessa against the boundary. It was a legal move, but cutthroat. "Welcome to the real world," she hissed, charging in. But Phantom didn't back down. He reared front hooves, raised like a living shield. "She's mine, no one touches her." Tessa leaned slightly left hand, guiding right hand, raising the silver whip, not to strike, just to signal. Just enough, Phantom understood. Sloane hesitated. A dazzling pivot, Tessa slipped through the narrow gap between two pressing horses, like water flowing between stones. The crowd clapped, at first just a few, then more, until Avalon roared with thunderous applause. A goal. The ball sailed clean into the post, the scorer, Tessa Wren. The commentator was speechless. The live stream hit hundreds of thousands of views. Comments flashed, "Who is she? Stable girl turned warrior. Did she just beat Sloane Maddox? Silver whip reversal." In the stands, those who once mocked her were now standing applauding. Meanwhile, Bianca dropped her champagne glass. Sloane clenched her teeth. Tessa turned, offering a graceful nod to the audience, then gently stroked Phantom's neck. "They thought dragging me out here would humiliate me, but they forgot anything born in solitude always knows how to win alone." The Avalon grandstand was still thundering with applause, but amid the noise, a strange silence opened up among the most powerful people in the country, and it was in that silence that Julian Caulfield stepped onto the honor podium. No announcer, no fanfare, just dark brown leather shoes striking the white marble stairs, each step a blow against the gilded silence of high society. Sunlight filtered through ancient oak trees, casting sharp light across his face. Still as a mirrored lake, no hat, no Caulfield. Family crest on his lapel, just a navy suit tugged slightly by the wind. As if to signal something was about to collapse, Julian raised his hand. The crowd hushed. "Before you continue clapping," he began, his voice not loud, but ringing like a bronze bell. "I must clarify something, not for you, but for those who believe they can twist truth with a nod in the dark. No one dared move. Bianca." Vale held her breath. Sloane. Maddox took a step back, sweat staining her spine. Julian unlocked his phone. The screen lit up, playing a video from the stable's surveillance camera. Sloane switched the nameplate on Obsidian Phantom's stall. "This is irrefutable evidence that someone deliberately attempted to endanger an honorary guest. She is not just my girlfriend. She is a living witness to the truth, and the truth, ladies and gentlemen, does not tremble before silk gowns or last names." Whispers spread like wildfire. Is this real Sloane? Swapped horses. And Bianca. Julian turned to face her. Sloan Maddox, as of this moment, you are permanently banned from all competitions under the Caulfield name. The family's sponsorship ends now, and so do all your privileges at Avalon. Sloan froze. She opened her mouth to speak, but Julian's eyes cut through her like a blade. If you say one word, I will release the full transcript of your conversation with Bianca this morning. Bianca flinched and Bianca Vale. As of now, the Vale brand is no longer part of Caulfield Group's investment portfolio. All shares will be pulled. The brand's name was removed from every Avalon event. The sound of shattering glass rang out. Bianca collapsed into her seat as if she'd just heard her sentence read aloud. Julian swept his gaze across the crowd, locking eyes with everyone who had ridiculed Tessa. Preston, son of an oil magnate, hid behind his sunglasses. An heiress from a Zurich banking dynasty discreetly opened her phone to delete the post titled "Stable Girl Fails to Ride." Julian raised his hand once more. I do not punish for revenge, I act to protect what this place has forgotten. Dignity, Tessa, Ren wasn't born into our world, and because of that, she hasn't been corrupted by it. Tessa still stood beside Obsidian Phantom, her face unreadable, but in her eyes something had changed. Not endurance, conviction. The kind that knows she is no longer alone in the fight. Julian stepped down from the podium, walking straight toward her. The entire grandstand held its breath. He stopped in front of her. In the gaze of thousands, "You don't need to ride another lap," he said softly, only loud enough for her. "Because to me, you won the moment you walked into this place without bowing your head." After Julian Caulfield's thunderous speech, Avalon's polo field was no longer just an arena. It became a court of reckoning. From the VIP rows, those who once mocked Tessa now sat still as stone hands that once raised champagne to ridicule her now rested in their laps, trembling. Each of Julian's words was a blow to the dignity they thought was untouchable, and at the center of it all, Tessa Wren still stood beside the horse, once chosen as a weapon to destroy her. But now Phantom stood calm, head lowered, as if it too was awaiting the final verdict. Julian turned to the event host and nodded. I'd like to add one final item to this year's closing ceremony. No one dared object. A black leather box was brought forward. Inside was Avalon's Medal of Honor, a rare award given only to individuals who've made a profound impact on the Avalon community. No one outside the nobility had ever received it. Today I present the Avalon Medal of Honor to someone who not only tamed the most dangerous horse we've ever bred. Julian paused, but who also gave this entire arena its first lesson in humility in years. He handed the medal to Tessa. A beat of silence. Then applause erupted. Not polite applause, but real, wholehearted, fierce. It began with the lowest tiers, the support staff, the horse trainers, the forgotten employees, then gradually upward, even the ones in silk suits and Swiss watches slowly, reluctantly. But they stood, Tessa remained still. The wind rippled her white dress. The silver whip at her saddle swayed gently. And in the golden light, she was no longer the stable girl. She didn't need a crown. She didn't need a title. She was herself. And that was enough. Bianca Vale stepped back from the grandstand, her heels sinking into the turf. Whispers clung to her like the buzz of mosquitoes. Her assistant handed her a phone, face pale. Ms. Bianca Vale stock is down 18% in the last 30 minutes. Sloan Maddox didn't run. She stood still staring at Tessa, her face ashen posture, poised but eyes shattered. She had once been Avalon's golden girl, the silk-wrapped dream of every prestigious ranking, but today her pride was the very thing that brought her down. Julian raised Tessa's hand, high. Tessa Wren, the woman who made Obsidian Phantom bow. The woman who made Avalon bow. A sea of applause followed. The live stream exploded with hundreds of thousands tuning in. Comments flooded in from all corners of the world. She's the Silver Whip Queen. From nobody to legend. This is the kind of woman we raise our daughters to become. The Avalon fields once reserved for diamond-laced elites and inherited fame had changed. It was no longer a shrine to elitism, but a place that proved true, worth needed no business card. 3 days after the match that rewrote the rules, a 48-second video appeared online, capturing Tessa Wren riding Obsidian Phantom in golden sunlight, silver whip, swaying white dress billowing in the wind. She didn't speak, she simply reached forward and stroked the neck of the beast once deemed unbreakable. The caption read, "Never underestimate a girl with quiet hands." That video swept across the globe. Within 72 hours, it had over 50 million views. The hashtag #SilverWhipQueen became a worldwide trend. Tessa Wren, once labeled the stable girl, now graced the cover of Equestrian Heritage magazine. Not in silk gowns or fashion lights, but in her worn riding gear, standing beside Obsidian Phantom, her hand resting on his neck like a fellow warrior. In her first interview, she was asked, "Did you ever feel like you didn't belong at Avalon?" Tessa smiled. "I didn't come to belong. I came to remind them. Honor doesn't have a bloodline." A week later, at Avalon Estate, Julian Caulfield sent out wedding invitations. Each one bore a single line. "She didn't change to fit us. We changed to be worthy of her." The ceremony took place on the same field where Phantom had once raged. Now he stood calm beside a row of white blossoms, a silk ribbon tied gently around his neck, the same one Tessa's mother had once gifted her. Tessa did not wear a lavish lace gown. She wore a white button-down shirt, leather riding pants, her hair in a low knot, silver whip still at her side. But when Julian took her hand before hundreds of guests, no one remembered class, origin, or wealth. They saw only one thing: the truth. After the wedding, a new bronze plaque was mounted at the main gates of Avalon Estate beneath the iconic horsehead emblem, Tessa Wren, the one who made the beast bow, the one who made Avalon open its heart. And then, on a spring afternoon, the following year, a 9-year-old girl, daughter of a gardener at Avalon, walked into school wearing bunny ears and holding a makeshift leather rein. When her classmates laughed, she shrugged and said, "Tessa got laughed at too. Now she's a legend." The teacher smiled. She didn't make her change. Because true legacy doesn't live in titles. It lives in those brave enough to stand tall when the world is waiting for them to fall.
Thank you for listening to the whole story. Stories Across Time is a place where timeless stories are retold with emotion, compassion, and the power of belief. Each video not only touches your heart, but also helps you see life through a deeper, more reflective lens. If you love heartwarming, inspiring, and soul-healing stories, hit subscribe and join us on a journey to discover life's most meaningful messages. Subscribe to Stories Across Time today, where every story matters.